Fox Valley Voice. Welcome to episode 4 of the Fox River Arts Podcast. My name is Jaime Gutierrez. Thank you for joining us once again in our series of conversations with artists and organizations participating in this year's Fox River Arts Ramble. Typically, up till now, I have featured one conversation with one artist. But guess what, folks? The Ramble is this weekend, April 13 and 14, Saturday and Sunday. I do have several conversations that I still have to share with you before this weekend, so I'm going to have to do more than one conversation per episode so that we have enough time to share these with you. And we are going to start in downtown Aurora, walking along the Fox River, past the dam, the stairs, and to the door of Cheryl Holz.
Hi.
Hey.
Jaime.
Yes,
Come
Cheryl.
on in.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
You too. Thanks for coming out.
Absolutely. Wow.
Yeah, I didn't clean for you. I just let you see it as is. So I know sometimes it looks overwhelming and sometimes it is, but I love to make a big mess. So.
Well, it seems to me like that's an important part of the artistic process, isn't it?
It is for me. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about where we're at right now.
We are in downtown Aurora. We overlook the Fox River. I love my view of the river. I upgraded a couple years ago from the view of the alley to the river, and I totally enjoy seeing what birds come through and flock and fly. So, yeah, that's where we are. Aurora downtown is happening. First Fridays are like now a huge thing. I mean, a lot of times there's between 10 and 20 venues, and so we're smack dab in the middle of that. So we try and take advantage of that and putting the Ramble on the map with it too.
Absolutely. So, can we start with a quick tour of your space?
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, without visuals, it's going to be hard, but
Yes, we're going to have to translate it into words
that's your job.
We just need to get people interested enough to come and visit you.
Sure,
How about that?
Sure. Well, most of the people who like my work have some kind of are vested in nature in one way or the other, and so this is what I call my collection wall, and this is where a lot of those people end up. So I've got rocks and fossils over here, seashells sorted into whelks or scallops or sand dollars. Over here, I've got leaves dried and pressed according to color. I have dead dragonflies and butterflies and other things that people now start to bring me now that they know I do this. Feathers, as you can see, pine needles, dollar plants. Anyhow, sand.
Okay. This has a bit of a natural museum feel to it.
Yeah, natural history feel. I love that. I think I would love to, just be able to rummage around in the basement of the Natural History Museum.
Yeah.
So
They do like sleepovers sometimes, don't they, down there, or cool stuff like that?
I know. I haven't done one, but it's on my bucket list. Yeah. So anyhow, this is where I try and organize as much as I can things that I incorporate into my work in one format or another. This is the technology area. It's a necessary evil. Although I do enjoy trying to figure out, for example, I take a picture of a tree on my morning walk. Thanks to the Technology Center, I can put that directly into my work that afternoon, and I really enjoy that kind of immediacy and being able to bring the outdoors in.
Okay.
So,
And you've got some of your work here up on the wall.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of work on the wall, but right above the technology center here, we've got.
This is usually a cleaner area. That's the technology. So I hang finished work over here. And then obviously for special events like the Ramble, I will have the larger wall all hung with finished work as well. But right now it's kind of in a transitory state. So, but yeah, a lot of work up here.
So we've got some pieces up here. Now, is this encaustic or what is that? It looks kind of...
I call myself kind of like an ADHD artist as far as processes and materials. I love to add something new to my arsenal. The thing that ties it all together is nature and natural patterns. But when I figure out a new way to do that, I just kind of fold it in, and I like to think it still looks like my work, but I get kind of an influx of energy from figuring out a new way to do it. So yes, there is definitely encaustic in here. One of the things that I loved about encaustic is it's a fluid medium, which then I can kind of recreate things that happen, in a river or a flood or anything like that. But the other thing that I just loved about it is it can encase natural materials instantly and preserve them. So, for example, I press leaves for several weeks to a year, and then I adhere them. I weight them down with sandbags. Then when they're dry, I seal them. And that can take like up to a week for that process. I can put it down in an encaustic piece, cover it up, and it's sealed. So anyhow, that's just an example of how, sometimes the technical aspects of it work as well too. Like here, this is prairie grasses that are embedded into the wax. I use feathers, anyhow. I use a little bit of everything, but a lot of it mixed media. This piece started out with just like kind of paint experiments that initially I was trying to make it work as a vertical piece, and it just wasn't working. And I turned it sideways and kind of made it a background for an assemblage of all these different aspects of my collection. So it's called Natural Collection Selection.
And we've got stones, and we've got butterflies, and eggs, and a nest. And shells. It's a little bit of everything in there.
Bracket fungus. Yeah.
Okay, sure. This piece, I feel, would work really well above someone's mantle.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. In a cabin, ideally. Or somewhere in the woods. Yeah. So.
If you have a mantle in a cabin in the woods, please come visit Cheryl.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, we've got a library over here.
I try to limit myself to one bookshelf, and it's kind of overflowing, but yeah. And then over here we've got, when I started doing encaustic, I did not want to start a fire, so I kind of created this. It's all ceramic tabletops so that it's fire resistant. I can put a hot tool on it. I can scrape off the wax when I'm done. And then I also had to set it up because ventilation is an issue. And so I'm venting it outside, and also gives me a great view of the river while I work.
I'm looking at the spillway here, the dam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I imagine, do you get to open these windows at all when it's nice outside?
Yeah, not today.
It's still a little chilly today.
Yeah, a little chilly, but yeah, absolutely. Yes, I do that all the time.
All right.
Yeah.
What else we got going on over here?
Paint cart, that just kind of moves, my paint cart moves around with me. I have various stations set up. Over here is a station that I use for inks and collage. I have sorted all different types of papers, different kind of categories, because if you collage, you collect.
You collect a lot.
Yeah, I do. These two tables can be a little bit of everything. They, underneath here, I have set it for silk screening, and so I pull it out and I can set that up here, or take it down if I'm doing something else. I've got all my paints stored over there by the type and the color. I try and be organized, but anyhow, once I get going, it all starts flying.
I was actually going to mention that even though to the lay person walking in here, they might think that this studio is a bit messy.
It is.
But there is a high level of organization going on here.
Yeah, I'm a little OCD about my organization. Yeah, so once it gets going, I just start throwing things. But, I usually work till I can't anymore, and then I come in the morning and just spend, probably half hour just returning some things to semblance of order. So when you go and you're like, oh my God, I need that purple, paint. You know where it is. So that's the goal, at least. So here's my portable sink. We've got 5 studios up here, and we all share one bathroom and water source at the end. So I kind of put it on a rolling cart so I don't have to run it down a million times. There's my couch, which basically is the dog bed. And this is a drying rack that right now is filled with a lot of boxes of natural things right now, and just a couple levels used for actual drying. Back here is it's kind of my wood shop and catch-all of everything. So I do build a lot of my own stuff. I used to build the panels from scratch. Now you can buy them, so that's something that I'm happy to farm out. But I do a lot of working back into it. So I might cut in a little square, build a niche for a specimen that, needs a perfect home. Or when I do assemblages, I have to figure out the engineering of how am I going to make these all stay together the way I want them to. And right now, huge pile of papers that I'm sorting through. And then keep going.
All right. We're heading further back into the studio.
This is the scary back room, but
there always has to be a scary back room.
So it's kind of hard to organize bark and logs and sticks and a little bit of wood. But in the middle of the winter, I can't necessarily run out and grab what I need, and so so I have a collection of this type of stuff to pull and work from, and then a wall of bubble and panels and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I started out in a garage, and there's no way I could move back into a garage now. Oh. So, yeah.
It seems like you have just about everything you need in your space here.
Pretty much. Yep. Yeah.
When did you first realize that you wanted to create art?
I always made stuff from the get-go. So that was never a question for me. The question was, how do I make a living from that? And my parents posed that to me, and I didn't really have a good answer. So I went into art education because I enjoy academics as well. So I got my undergrad in art education from Northern, and then didn't last long in the public schools. I enjoyed the kids, but not all the political stuff that happens behind the scenes. So quit my job, moved to California, started making art, and realized that how much I didn't know, and so I started working on the deficiencies to go back and get my MFA. And I ended up back at Northern, which they don't recommend, but they gave me a full ride, a teaching scholarship. So that's where I ended up.
Who doesn't recommend going to Northern?
I don't know. Oh, as far as they recommend you not getting your master's the same place that you got your undergrad. Oh. Yeah, that's what I meant. No.
To make sure that your skills might be a little more diversified, or
right. But I had a different major, in undergrad than I did. So basically, I just wanted a couple years to focus on my work, and nobody's going to give you a grant to do that. So I went and studied. I initially went into grad school thinking, okay, I could teach at the college level. That would be a lot of fun. And when I got out, I started doing some freelance teaching just so I could do work and, teach. And I found, my niche was teaching kids, and my classes backed up, and I had waiting lists, and it was fun. It's exhausting because I would do it on site. Like I'd love to do like art in the park, but I did paper making and fiber and ceramics, and all that involves, a couple ton of materials to lug on site. It was a lot of fun, but basically that caught on, and then I was finding I had less and less time for my work. And actually, a friend proposed a challenge to me. She said, "You're trying to be a doctor and a dentist. You need to pick one." And at first I was offended because I said, I'm a really good teacher. I'm a good artist as well. And I do think you can do both, but it just kind of put that, something in my bonnet, went, all right. And so for 2 years, I didn't do much art. I just took every teaching gig I could, kind of stockpiled money, and then proposed to my husband that I give it a whirl, and he's been awesome. He said, absolutely, it might take longer than that. And so in 1999, I quit teaching and never looked back. And I moved in to a smaller space across the hall here in 99. So it'll be about 20 years that I've been in this building. Yeah, so.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Good for you.
Thank you.
You've got some pretty good neighbors up here, I imagine, as well.
Yeah, Yes, yeah. David Hedinger is down the hall, and so he was here a little bit before I was. We've got Ann Von Air across the hall. She does oil and cold wax. We've got Rafael Rocha, which is another NIU alum, and he's still figuring things out, I think. But at the current time, he's working a lot with plaster and body casting, or at least that's the last I've seen of his work. And then Tara Ganacchio, we call her new, although she's been here I think over 2 years. She hasn't been here 20, but Tara does some awesome work, and she's a couple years out of Northern as well. So she's working on building up her body of work.
Where do you find your clients, your patrons? Where do you typically
Good
get?
question. Wherever I can get them. No, and the thing is that seems to change. You know, it's like a moving target all the time. I never wanted to do, but I kind of got, I was in an artist support group, which I highly recommend making one if you don't have one. And they encouraged me to do a fair, a show. And they lent me everything because I didn't have any display and everything. And I made like $1,500. And I went, oh, well, maybe there's something to this. So anyhow, I kind of got sucked in. And so I did a lot of fairs for a couple years. I got into the number 1 and 2 shows in the nation. I traveled to Sausalito, I traveled to Colorado, but it's hard work. A lot of people don't realize, you know, when they go to a fair, they think that, you know, they supplied the tent and set it up for you, and, you know, you just kind of moved in, and it's, you know, it can be grueling setting up in 100-degree weather or, you know, 20, 30-mile-an-hour winds or whatever. Anyhow, that, and then, you know, the small recession we had kind of, you know, put a damper on that. And I just kind of started to shift gears. And so I started working with a corporate art consultant. And so I have a lot of work placed in like health environments, like hospitals. And then one found me, and she had me doing all these commissions. So basically a commission is a custom piece of artwork. So it was for a Franciscan Children's Hospital. It was a huge job, took like at least a year, if not longer. And the Franciscans like me because St. Francis is the patron saint of, you know, animals and nature and all things. So I'm a good fit for them. And so I made a different piece for each level of the Children's Hospital. And it was a totally different, like, I don't normally make stuff that's geared towards kids' work. But again, this consultant talked me into it somehow. And anyhow, you always learn something. I ended up making them a little more sculptural, which required me to figure out a way to do that and have it be sturdy enough that a little kid, you know, coming up and picking at it, you know, is not going to destroy it. So anyhow, so I did a lot of, you know, corporate consulting and commissions that way. I still do quite a few commissions. Actually, the mural on the back of the building was commissioned by my landlord, Kim Granholm, who's president of Downtown Aurora. And she said, let's do this. Let's kick this off. She, however, wanted to use her newest technology. So she keeps evolving with her print company. And so that was a challenge because the back of the building has fire escape, vents, dumpsters, lights. You know, it's where everything comes to die in the back, you know, plumbing, electrical, all that type of thing. So I was trying to figure out how can I make that beautiful? And so it's actually not finished. We are going to, the second kind of phase of it will be large panels that will cover up a lot of the like grid of pipes and that type of thing. But the initial layer that's up there now is what she printed on vinyl and attached it to the building.
Kim has to be a pretty cool person to have on your team, right?
She's awesome.
She's
Absolutely.
very supportive of the arts and a lot of the activities going on down here.
Yeah. When we had a big party actually last year for the inaugural Ramble, we did the mural unveiling that day, and I had a little talk, and I said, you know, I'm not gonna. I am thankful, obviously, for her commissioning me to do this, but what I'm more thankful for is her providing affordable studio space, because I couldn't do the large commissions that I've done. I couldn't do half the things that I do without a space, a committed, dedicated space that's large enough to let me work, you know, 30 feet long if I need to, or, you know, whatever the commission calls for. And she could be charging a lot more. A lot of places downtown do, but a lot of them are half empty as well. So we really appreciate the fact that, you know, she basically supports the arts that way. But she's been awesome. And before her, Bob and Joyce Ruland owned the building, and Joyce was an artist, and so she said to her husband Bob, like, hey. So we gradually kicked out all the insurance offices and created them. So when I moved in across the hall, it was an insurance office. I had knocked down walls, built a drying rack. Then when I came over here, this large area had at least 8 cubby holes. And I said, no. So I keep moving into these office spaces and...
Nothing good ever comes out of a cubicle.
Yeah, I said, I feel like a mouse in a maze. I can't. I couldn't knock down the supporting wall, though, but it has a beautiful arch, so I was good with that.
So quickly, we're going to wrap up here and let you get back to your work. You have any short-term goals that, anything different that you're wanting to try here in the near future?
Yes, actually, business-wise, I'm pursuing licensing. So that's a different thing for me. I've had print publishers before, but so I'm looking into having my work put on any number of products. So, but that involves a lot of screen time, which is painful, but isn't necessary. So that's kind of what I'm working towards. And then of course, hosting an event is a lot of work, but we're excited about the Ramble. And I usually try and do something fun there. I think I might have an artist corner because I know a lot of artists, visit as well, and I might be selling off a lot of my art supplies that aren't being used, and so it'll just frees me up some space to collect something else. Yeah.
Well, Cheryl, thank you so much for sharing your space and your story with me today, and I am going to encourage everyone to come and take a look at your beautiful studio during the Fox River Arts Ramble, and keep creating.
I will.
If you'd like to find Cheryl online,
website is www.cherylholz.com, and that's CHERYLHOLZ.com. Holz Fine Art on Facebook, and at Cheryl Holz on Instagram.
And if you'd like to find Cheryl in real life,
okay, 50 East Galena, which basically everyone's familiar with the Paramount Theater in downtown Aurora. We are kitty corner from that, right on the Fox River.
Next up, I go on another studio tour in Aurora. This time, I visit the home of Maureen Gasek.
I'm Maureen Gasek. I'm a fine artist. I do contemporary abstracts. That's my forte. My work has spanned from jewelry design to graphic design to clay work to painting, and painting's my passion.
Okay. Oh, I see lots of...
This is my teaching studio.
Your teaching studio? Okay.
Yeah. So I have students come once a week here and create and explore. And they work at all different levels, on different types of projects. So it's basically open studio. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And different materials, different mediums?
Yeah, a lot of mixed media, a lot of painting. I'm working with a woman right now that does sculpture, clay. And she's going to be doing, I think they call it a hard surface or something like that, where they're actually painting the clay or staining the clay instead of actually glazing it. So they bring it up to a full fire and then putting color and then working there. So she's learning actually how to paint on clay. So I'm working with her on that.
If we were to go back in time to your early development, when did you first realize that you were going to be creating art?
I sold my first piece in first grade for 25 cents. It was actually a collage of my hands. But then going back, you kind of, as you get older, you kind of rediscover like your childhood and really when it started. And I believe that saying, I could dig a hole to China. So I used to dig holes in my backyard, but I hit this wonderful clay bed. And so I found that if I rolled up the clay into balls or into like cylinders, I could use that as chalk on my sidewalk. So my sidewalk was my first palette. I grew up out in the country. So.
And where was that?
I grew up in Oak Creek, Wisconsin.
Okay.
So I'm a cheesehead.
I like cheese.
Me too.
And beer too. They have beer there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was actually a beer taster in Wisconsin for a while.
Like a professional beer taster?
Yeah, I was on a
Because I'm a beer taster, but I don't get paid for it.
I was on a panel of 6, so we didn't get paid. We just get to taste and critique them. It was fun.
So then how about school? Did you take advantage of art classes in school?
Yeah, I was the creative kid. I was the questioner, so the explorer, the questioner. I took as much art as I could. When I was in high school, my study halls were the art room. I got permission because my grades were well, and I got permission to do all my study halls in the art room. So, and then I wanted to pursue a career in fashion, actually. That's how I started. And I was accepted to the Institute in New York on a probationary period, but I was paying for it, and I figured, well, if I don't quite make it, that's a lot of money to spend for a year. And so I decided to go to a university in Wisconsin.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was your major there?
I actually started in fashion, decided I did not like it. And then I went into graphics and then graphic design, and then fine arts. So I graduated with a BS in science in graphics, but I had about 30 credits extra in fine art. So I took a lot of art.
So once you were out of school, what was your first professional job where you could create art?
I actually was a graphic designer. I started with a print company. I was one of those people, because I was the questioner, I decided I couldn't call myself a graphic designer until I actually had experience. So I worked in the print industry. I worked as a cartographer for a while. I've done a lot of different creative...
Cartographer?
Yeah, I drew maps.
Nice.
Yeah, so I worked for an environmental consulting firm and did mapping and ortho views and lots of things for courtroom cases as well as studies. So, and all that was done on board. All it was done by hand. So that's kind of when CAD and that started to come out.
Okay.
So,
But pre-GPS, though.
Yes, very pre-GPS. A lot of measurements in the field.
Cool.
So it was kind of cool. It was real hands-on. So, and then more in graphics, I got into advertising and marketing and kind of progressed from there.
So what role did fine arts play in your life during this period where you were graphic designer?
I actually had a studio in Milwaukee in the 3rd Ward, and I painted. So I always was painting. That was my passion. I was trained as an oil painter in college. And when I lost my studio, because things happened, I moved and things like that. I didn't lose it. I had to give up the space. I went into acrylics, and that's when I started to explore the world of acrylic painting. And then I lived next to a ceramic studio, and the woman that ran that I actually went to college with. So on weekends, when she did shows, I ran the studio so I could create in clay. So then I created in clay for about 4 years. So painting clay, and then I did jewelry, and it just morphed from there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I've always had it in my life. I've always had some sort of fine art happening in my life, whether it was clay or metals or painting or just, sketching or drawing. But I've always been in, the art arena in some way, shape, or form.
Well, can we take a look around your studio? We're here at your studio in the basement. Mm-hmm. So why don't you point out some of your favorite parts?
When I had this built out, one of my favorite parts is the supply closet. So you want to walk over there? Yeah. So I had this designed especially for my students, because this is really my teaching studio. So they can come in here. All the supplies are here for them. It's also my surplus of supplies. So I can come down here and grab what I need. They can grab what they need. I have drying racks. I have tables set up. I have space behind with behind that wall where I have flat files, so things get stored there. So they have an opportunity to move around freely and work, and then I can command the space when they're not here, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. It looks pretty organized.
Yeah, it's my OCD. I'm the artist that has OCD. Like, it's a little messy right now for me.
Really? This is messy?
Yeah.
Wow, it looks pretty organized.
Thanks. I work hard at that.
Don't beat yourself up, okay? What else do we have down here?
Well, you'll see several projects that my students are working on. There's supply cabinets. There's a private restroom for them. Again, they have access to anything in the studio. If I don't have it, I then run upstairs to my other studio, because that's my private studio upstairs. And if you want to check that out, we can.
Yes, please.
Yeah, great. And there's a cat running around here, so there's one down here and 3 upstairs. So, but different art projects. I'm working currently on I have the Beholder piece. That is morphing and changing, and I wake up at 3 a.m. and go, I need to change that. That is not working. So it's a work in progress. So getting there.
So Eye of the Beholder, which is the May exhibition at Water Street Studios in Batavia.
Yes. And I'm excited because it's a fashion piece, and I started in fashion. And I've actually been drawing this piece for about 7 years.
Wow.
Because it's morphing off of me not having a TV for over 10 years.
Okay.
So I saved.
You currently don't have a TV?
Actually, I just got one just this past year due to someone passing, but unfortunately. But it's kind of nice. I don't have channels. I watch movies. I'm kind of a movie buff. And
So what was the first thing you watched when you finally got a TV after 10 years?
I don't know. I think I surfed because I
You're like, wow, look at all this stuff.
And I didn't like most of it, so.
Yeah, it's mostly garbage.
It is. It's a plug-in drug. It's a plug-in drug. So I have Netflix now.
Cool. Well, what's the next stop on our tour?
And you can see here I have stacks of my work that I'll be in the Fox River Arts Ramble. So a lot of that's going to be going to Gallery 1904, 1 East Benton. I'll be showing that Saturday and Sunday next weekend. And then I have my larger pieces here, which actually that was at Joby, the big one. It's like a 9-foot by whatever. And then we're going to go upstairs to my private studio.
Cool. Let's do it.
Okay. So this is my private studio. And it's just kind of semi-got cleaned. My OCD.
It's still pretty organized, but it's an organized chaos, to be sure.
Yes. My paints are in colors. All my paints are like organized by color, so yes. And this room nothing was done to this room except the floor. I wanted to put in one single sheet of vinyl, so there's no seams, and easy if I need to replace it or clean it. It's easy to clean. But as you can see, it's 1968 wallpaper. Butterflies, flowers.
You could just start randomly painting your walls. You could do a mural or something.
Yeah. Well, I got the mural in the hall. I started. Oh, okay. Yeah, we walked by it.
I missed it.
It's kind of crazy. Okay. Yeah. See, and I paint on the doors. I mean, I always have things going on. So I usually have that easel set up. I need to get a large canvas on that, but I'm working on smaller pieces for the ramble and finishing up things. Mm-hmm.
If you could describe your style, you did mention earlier that you do abstract work primarily. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's, contemporary abstract. It's very fluid. It's very organic. And my paintings range anywhere from 20 to 50 layers. So it's multiple layers. So you get that translucency. So I do a lot of glazing and things. And sometimes I just start over, in the middle of something with a base and then kind of create from there. I paint intuitively, but then I have to step back and go, okay, where are my design principles? How do these all come into play? Is this working? Have I cut my canvas? Is it interesting? Am I engaging the viewer? That type of thing. They all kind of take on an organic form.
Yeah. To someone who is perhaps not as educated in art, such as myself, it seems to me that the abstract style might be one of the more difficult styles to access for us new folks, right? Have you had conversations with people in terms of them saying, what is this and what am I supposed to do with this?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. When I did shows, especially in Chicago, people walk in and be like, what does that mean? And I'm like, how do you feel? I actually put it back on them. I'm a firm believer, if I get a reaction, it's better than no reaction at all. I paint once a year for the Unforgettable Art, which is for Alzheimer's. And a couple years ago, I had a woman walk around that was a patron coming to the event. You paint live, and then they all go up for auction at the end of the evening. There's 50 artists painting live. It's an incredible event. And she walked around and my painting stunned her and she was just like, oh. And I says, thank you. And she looked at me because she thought she offended me, but she really didn't offend me because I got a reaction out of her. That painting stirred something in her that made her very uncomfortable. And it's like that was success for me. So I'd rather have a reaction than no reaction because then I know I've achieved what I need to achieve. It's really like, how do you resonate with it? How do you feel? What does it say to you? Is it a color thing? Is it appealing? Is there emotion in it? My paintings tend to appeal to a lot of men because they think it's like astronomy or underwater. So a lot of divers, people that have dived, they're like, oh, that, reminds me of diving, or it's like, they love the sky, and it's like that's like, space. So it's interesting. I have this appeal with a heavy male crowd with my work, which is interesting because, I think they're very organic and they can be extremely feminine, but yet they have that kind of darkness to it. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Yeah.
Sure.
Uh-huh. So now this new stuff that I'm working on is very different. My brother passed, it's just over a year now, and I couldn't paint for a year. So now I'm starting to paint out my dreams and work out things, and it's interesting. So it's frustrating, but they're coming along. So if things are coming out, which is good, I think it's a necessary tool I need to use, my talent, my paint, and get those crazy thoughts out of my head and, kind of find some peace with it.
So it seems like when you're creating these abstract pieces, you do have some kind of vision for what you're going for, visually, emotionally. Is that fair to say?
Yes, and because I paint intuitively, that doesn't mean I just throw paint on it and oh, that's successful, or oh, I got it out, it's done. I think when you're an abstract painter, you really have to know design principles. You have to know all of those things that art is about, like values. You have to know composition. You have to know color. You have to know color theory. You have to know balance. You have to know all of those things, because when you step back, if you don't keep that viewer engaged and you miss a few of those design principles, it's flat. It's not interesting. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that's why I'm a firm believer in even when I teach my students to make sure you keep the viewer engaged. How do you keep that viewer engaged? And that's really knowing a lot of the design principles, because you could have the most beautiful piece. If you don't have those three values, it'll go flat. It'll flatten out. People will look at it and be like, it's nice, but, and it's something that's missing, and it generally comes down to those design principles. Do you have to hit them all? No. You don't. But if you're successful, at least 3 to 4 of them, you'll have a successful piece. And I think finishing it and refining it and making sure it's not sloppy, taking pride in your work.
Let's switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to ask you about some other artists in the area. Mm-hmm. In an earlier episode of this podcast, I spoke with Jessica Fincher, mm-hmm. and she's a big fan of yours.
Great. That's wonderful. I'm a big fan of hers, too.
So let me ask you, who's doing some exciting work in the area lately?
I like Cheryl Holz's new work. I don't know if you know Cheryl Holz, yeah.
I actually interviewed her as well. Great.
She's a process person. She's just like, wow. So I actually, I admire her. I admire her work. I like the fact that she puts so much of herself in her work and her time and energy. Anne Von Eyre, she's doing some extremely creative abstracts with oils. And it's neat to see her go from that traditional kind of pastel work to where she's at now. And I love seeing that growth. I love seeing people change their work and not be afraid to. Because that's art. I mean, that's creativity. Sometimes you just have to get it out. And Jessica, I'm glad you interviewed her, because I was teaching at those paint and wine things, and I found her, and I says, you actually have talent. I says, have you ever thought about painting? And she's like, no. And so she actually, one of the paintings downstairs on the easel is her. She's working on it. So she's back coming to an open studio. So I love her. She's come from, wine and painting to creating every week. She paints, and I just admire people that take kind of the bull by the horns and says, I'm going to do this and not be afraid.
Tell me your thoughts about the Fox River Arts Ramble. This is the second year for this. What do you think in terms of the importance to the local arts community?
I think it's wonderful. I like seeing the communities combined. It's like, does it start in Elgin?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Elgin all the way. How cool is that? Bringing the arts communities together. It's not this city versus that city or that community versus. It's bringing everyone together, and people can go and explore and find other talent and artists and find people that are doing different things and creative things. So I think it's wonderful. I think it's just only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So I'm so happy to be participating this year. And I actually invited 2 other artists to show with me. So I have a jewelry artist and then one of my other students.
And you are going to be, once again, you're displaying at?
Gallery 1907, 1 Benton Avenue. It's the old library. So I'll be in the basement gallery area there. That'll be Saturday and Sunday.
Let's get some of your information out there. If someone wants to, are you taking new students?
Yes, I always take new students. I teach a different class once a month at Blix, so Blix has my schedule. You can reach me at maureenartist.com. That's my website, www.maureenartist.com. Very easy. And I work for the Aurora Regional Chamber of Commerce also, so you can always reach me there. I'm connected to Water Street Studios. A lot of people know me, so if you need to find me, just ask. Most people know how to get a hold of me. And I'll be at the Arts Ramble next weekend, and then at May 10th at Eye of the Beholder show. So, yes, I'm excited. I'm getting back. I'm getting back in activity again, so to speak.
Maureen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Greatly appreciated.
You may have heard some light cooing in the background, and that's not you going crazy. Those are Maureen's pet birds.
They are tangerine ringneck doves, and I've had them, I want to say they might be like 12 or 14 years old. So, and they make a beautiful cooing sound. Yeah, they're beautiful. They are beautiful.
Let's get a little bit of these guys. Do they have names?
No.
All right, doves. What do you think?
It was like Popeye and olive oil, but we weren't sure.
Many, many thanks to both Cheryl Holz and Maureen Gasek. You can see them on the Fox River Arts Ramble this weekend, Saturday, April 13th, Sunday, April 14th. Find out more information, including all of the artists and organizations participating, at foxriverarts.com. Thank you to our maestro, Ryan Carney, for his wonderful music. You can find him at whoisryancarney.com. And there is one more episode coming out before this weekend. I am making the long trip way up north to Elgin. The arts are alive in Elgin, I am here to tell you. And so look for episode number 5. I'm Jaime Gutierrez. I'll talk to you soon. Fox Valley Voice.